Okay, so welcome class. We're starting our lesson on water pollution today. First of all, I just want to show you what water pollution can look like. I'm going to dive right into this video here on the Exxon Valdez oil spill that happened in 1989. And it's one of the worst cases of oil pollution ever recorded. So just please pay attention for a few minutes and then we'll move into some questions on the same subject.
This should have been the easiest spill in the world to clean up.
It's not only the worst oil spill in U.S. history, it's by far the largest in such a remote, pristine area. The tanker, the Exxon Valdez, had just loaded more than 1 million barrels of Alaskan crude. It was about 25 miles from the Valdez terminal and was apparently trying to dodge ice flows from the nearby Columbia Glacier when it ran aground.
I want to assure everyone that Exxon is mobilizing all available resources to mitigate the impact from this incident. Exxon has assumed full financial responsibility for the incident.
Exxon has come under heavy criticism for not moving more rapidly to clean up the spill.
The crews have not arrived yet to begin cleaning the slime off the island's beaches and rocks. That probably won't happen until next week. Exxon says it cannot do the job in a hasty, haphazard manner.
And there's no doubt this is a major tragedy both for the environment and for the people up there.
Day 10 of the oil spill crisis and the cleanup effort still just beginning. A few crews are on a few beaches removing a little bit of oil, but there are hundreds of miles of affected coastline. Exxon, which is running the operation, is coming under heavy criticism from state and federal officials.
Where the existing management structure of this cleanup is not adequate to the task that we're going to do it ourselves, independent of that.
State officials in Alaska have made an accounting of what's happened to the spill, now covering an area of over 3,000 square miles. Exxon has had problems not only with its recovery efforts, but also with the continued leakage of oil from its crippled tanker. Officials say a small amount of oil still seeps from the holes in the ship, and containment booms around the vessel are not stopping it completely.
This is one of the many small armies Exxon has mobilized to wipe up oil-soaked beaches stone by stone. Jay Hare, president of the National Wildlife Federation, watched the work for a while and then just muttered.
I appreciate these folks doing this, but quite frankly, I don't see this doing a hell of a lot of good.
Hare calls this futile, and he says oil rubbed into the rocks will take longer to evaporate. He intends to push for a new national energy policy, hoping that a national sense of outrage will add to his political muscle.
After the Exxon Valdez ran aground, Exxon spent $3.8 billion on cleanup, but the crews only scratched the surface.
If you just let the water stand for even just a minute, then the oil blobs will start to show.
Still there 21 years after the spill.
So, 1989 hit with the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, and then they kind of come back to the same area 25 years later and find that there's still oil present in the rocks in the area to this day, and the environment is still recovering from this over 2 decades later. So, some questions to follow up on this. So, what is oil pollution? How can you describe it? One person just give me an answer. Maya?
Like when oil gets spread in water and starts affecting the things around it in the water.
Yeah, just like the video you saw, animals being contaminated with the oil. Some of them had died from exposure to it. Yeah, so it's just really kind of, does oil and water mix? No, it doesn't. So oil is less dense than water, so it'll sit on top and just follow the ocean's current. In this example, it flowed to the shores and infected all the beaches and the coastal areas of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. What did it do to the environment exactly? What did you see?
It contaminated the rocks on the shores, and it hurt some of the animals that lived in the environment.
Yeah, so the rocks were covered in oils, the organisms, the on and off land animals were exposed, covered in oil. Some of them died, some of them were able to be cleaned up by the people helping in Alaska. Anything else you saw? Like it said in the video, still over 20 years later, there's still oil in the rocks, still sitting there to this day.
Like you said, it's taken more than just like a small cleanup. It takes a lot of work to get oil off of rocks and out of water.
I mean, you've
causes,
all, yeah.
like-
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, it's fine. It causes like a continuous contamination to like what comes after just that decade.
Y'all cooked with oil in the kitchen before, made eggs, or anything like that? Ever gotten grease on your hands? Is it easy to come off with just water?
No.
No, you need soap, right? So this gets that greasy feeling off your hands. That's exactly what it is. They're usually the big one that's used to this day is Dawn dish soap. They've actually used it in other oil spills around the world to clean up animals in the coastline with Dawn dish soap because it's a really good degreaser. Okay, next question. What are some other things you know about water pollution? Just like what comes to mind when you hear water pollution? Other words, things to think about?
A lot of creatures that live in the water, they get contaminated with these things in their water, which kills some of them.
Yeah, we'll move into, that'll help us with our next question with what you're talking about.
Certain pollutants like fertilizers can cause overgrowth
Yes.
of plants.
Yeah, that's another form of water pollution that we've talked about in an earlier lesson on water. Good. One more person tell me what they know about water pollution. Oh, we just moved to the next question. What are other forms of water pollution that you know? Think about just like what can contaminate water, whether it's chemicals, other liquids. All right, come on, I saw your hand first.
Like when boats are out and they end up getting an oil leak and it starts spreading on the water.
Yes, so just what we saw in Exxon Valdez oil spill. Go ahead, Lola.
Chemicals like nitrates and phosphates, like fertilizers, they can spill into the ocean or you become waste and trash into the ocean.
So then you got chemicals going on there. So there are certain chemicals that you don't want exposed to water. A lot of them come from farmland. Those are called non-point source pollutions. We talked about that during water quality.
Mercury from factories.
Yeah, mercury from factories is a point source pollution. So non-point source is many sources of the same pollution going into the water. Usually that can be on farmlands because there's multiple areas where it can run off into water. Then you have like mercury, arsenic. Those are industrial pollutants that can end up in your water, and they're usually from like a drainage pipe that you can actually see the location of them entering the water system. So those are both good, all good examples. So you're thinking about previous lessons we've done, water quality, and stuff like that. It's really good. All right, so now I want you to open up your PowerPoints to water pollution. Previously we did water quality, and now we're doing the other side of it, water pollution today. So make sure you're opened up to slide 12 and water pollution. And we're just going to dive right into the beginning information of this. So, like we talked about, with water pollution, there are many different ways it can enter. Water can re-enter the system. This is called a hydrologic system. A system of interrelated components, including the processes of precipitation, evaporation, transpiration, infiltration, groundwater flow, stream flow, etc., in addition to those structures and devices that are used to manage the system. So hydrologic system sounds a lot like what? Another word for you. Transpiration, infiltration, groundwater flow. What is it also called? The water cycle. Yes, good job. The water cycle. So it's basically the water cycle, but it's also working with structures and devices that are used to manage the system. So we're also adding another part to this, to the water cycle. It's how we manage this water system, this water cycle. So the next vocabulary word we're going to see is stewardship. This one's the responsible planning and management of resources following practices that protect Earth's resources. This is where you're going to hear the term EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, a lot. They are responsible for this in the U.S., planning and management of resources. One example is water, that you're going to see them responsible for stewardship of every state in the country. All right, so pollution, just basically it means that basically there was a thought that for many years there would always be a supply of clean water. You know, 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water, so it just assumed that we always have a resource of water. People dump chemicals and waste into the water supply, hoping it would wash out to sea where it would not cause any problems. You know, big deep oceans, you don't have to worry about it ever again, out of sight, out of mind. That actually isn't the case today. Pollution is a release of an unwanted substance into the environment. That's the definition we're talking about here. And the pollutant is a substance that can harm the environment. So pollution is just the general statement, release of unwanted substance into the environment. So a pollutant could be oil spills, arsenic, fertilizers. Those are individual pollutants that we're talking about under water pollution. Like I said, arsenic is a poisonous chemical that is used especially to kill insects and weeds. They're also in fertilizers and pesticides on farms. Human and animal waste can also be pollutants. You know, human and animal waste is not the cleanest stuff. If it runs off into your local clean water system, it can cause a lot of diarrheal diseases like E. coli, dysentery, and be toxic for people who get infected. So here's, I'm going to come back to these videos though. So I wanted to play this video on pollution. I'm from Onondaga Lake. This is in the Syracuse area where I grew up. We've always known as Onondaga Lake as one of the most dirtiest lakes in the country. So here's a video of them cleaning it up.
This is a real B&H customer story. Steph Mavis came to B&H to take her photography to the next level.
What we're looking at here is the largest of our 3 dredges here at the Onondaga Lake project. This particular dredge we're looking at has a 1,000 horsepower pump on it. For this project, it's pumping 5,500 gallons per minute. The cutter head is turning approximately 25 to 30 RPM. It's going slow to make sure that we churn up the material to allow us to pump it up to water. The operators sit up in an elevated cab. That way they can have a good overview of the whole area that we're dredging. The equipment that we're using here is all state-of-the-art. The GPS equipment that we have on the dredges allows the operator to see the area that we need to go, not only side to side, but also the depth that we have to go to achieve the cleanup. The dredging process runs 6 days a week, 24 hours a day. We are implementing the cleanup under supervision of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. During the project, we're removing about 2 million cubic yards of material. Honeywell expects to complete dredging by the end of 2014. That's a year ahead of schedule.
Okay, so basically, some backstory from where I grew up is that Onondaga Lake was polluted during the Industrial Revolution, all the way up until there were more regulations by the EPA to stop the pollution into Onondaga Lake and other bodies of water in New York State. But over time, there were massive factories that got involved with just dumping in the earlier part of the 1900s and really set the tone, or really, started the process. So basically, Onondaga Lake has huge levels of mercury in it from the dumping over the years. And the dredging is what's being done to churn up the water at the bottom to take out and filter out that mercury that has settled and been down there for a long time. Basically, this is all done about 5 to 8 years ago, and now they're trying to encourage more people to use the lake other than just for fishing. Even if you used it for fishing, you're not allowed to even eat the fish. It's just like the fish have high levels of mercury in it too, so it's just mainly for catch and release fishing, and people will use it for boating on top. It smells all the time too, but so the question that I have on the slide is, after explaining all that, would you swim in there? Just yes or no?
No.
No. When this first got done in Syracuse, they were like, it's clean now, it's safe to swim, you're good. Do you believe them? No. No. Yeah, that was the outcome after it was all clean. They tried to get some state officials like cops, fire department to jump in the lake, encourage people to start swimming in it, but it never took effect because it's got a long history and reputation for being polluted and toxic. Like there was a plan at one point to turning part of it into a beach and actually trying to get more tourism into the area, but the reputation and history of Onondaga Lake has prevented that from happening even after the cleanup. And from what I hear, they still have decent levels of mercury in the water even after the cleanup. So it was a good attempt. I'm sure they cleaned a lot of it out, but I still think it's still got a long ways to go. So, like I said, there are two sources of water pollution, point source and non-point source water pollution. Point source, you know where it's coming from, oil spills, waste spilling from a drainage pipe. Non-point source is you don't know, things like animal waste and fertilizers running off from a farm. And stuff like that. So it's important to understand the difference between the two. Obviously, if there's an oil tanker that hits something and it leaks out, you know that's a point source, you know where it's coming from. Drain pipe into a river, you can see that pipe, you know where it's coming from. Non-point source, like I said, is on a farm, usually in farmland, open areas where there's multiple sources of pollution that cannot be found. And fertilizers and animal waste are usually spread over a large field and you can't tell where it can run off into water. So there's other examples of point source. So in order to give plants additional nutrients, people add nutrient-rich fertilizers to the soil. Excess nutrients flow into the water supply. We covered this in water quality called eutrophication. Too much nutrients in water can cause overgrowth of algae and take away sunlight, oxygen, and clarity in the water, causing bad water quality and making the water system unhealthy. So what are those two chemicals that are in fertilizer that we don't want to have in water?
Nitrates and phosphates.
Nitrates and phosphates, good job. Are there any questions up to this point? No? Okay. So tomorrow we're going to do a lesson on water oil spill simulation. You'll have the opportunity to try to separate out oil and water in a demo I'll be doing with the class. It'll be pretty fun. We all know in here that oil does not mix with water, so it's going to be a challenge to just try to separate out oil from water. But we'll stop here for today. Again, are there any questions? No? Okay. That's it. Thank you very much. You can pack up, close your computers, pack up.